Where the rainforest meets the mountains lies a place of breathtaking beauty and hidden danger. Babinda Boulders looks like paradise, but it keeps taking lives with disturbing consistency. With over 21 recorded deaths, this is Australia's deadliest swimming hole. But what makes this place so lethal? And how can even people who try to be careful become its victims? Nestled in the foothills between Queensland's tallest peaks, Babinda Boulders gets the highest average rainfall in Australia. Nearly 8 meters of rain falls on these mountains each year, carving pathways through ancient granite. The site, officially known as Boulders Scenic Reserve, features a main swimming hole that's designated safe for visitors, but also the infamous restricted sections, including Devil's Pool, the Chute, and Babinda Falls. The danger comes from the geography. The Babinda Kerr Range creates a natural barrier to the prevailing southeasterly trade winds. This leads to extraordinary amounts of rain. All of this water eventually makes its way down the mountains, and much of it passes through Babinda Creek and the boulders. That's a lot of water pushing through a small creek. Add in the caves, channels, and crevices carved into the rock over millions of years, and it becomes extremely dangerous. After European settlers first encountered the Babinda Boulders in the late 19th century, it did not take long for tragedy to strike. A young man visiting from a nearby farming community was swept away in what locals would later call the Chute, a narrow channel where the entire volume of Babinda Creek is forced through a crack in the granite just 3 to 6 feet wide. The Chute is particularly dangerous. On the surface, it looks like a narrow channel, but underwater, rock has been eroded, creating a water-filled cavern that drops 25 to 30 feet deep. At that point, the rushing water becomes highly aerated, full of bubbles, which makes it tough to stay afloat. Even the strongest swimmers can't fight it. Fast forward to 2020, and people are still drawn to the deadly blue waters. On April 6, 2020, 18-year-old Madison Tam headed to Babinda Boulders with a friend and her boyfriend. Even though there were warning signs and fences saying no-go zone, the group decided to check out Devil's Pool. What Madison and her friends didn't realize were the underwater hazards. Below the surface of Devil's Pool are more flooded caves and crevices that create powerful bubbles and can pull you under. But not only that, there are also rocks and logs that get dragged into the mix, which can hit you, potentially knocking you out or trapping you underneath. Madison was swimming in Devil's Pool when she suddenly vanished underwater. She was dragged down 25 feet and didn't resurface. Her friend tried to grab her, but couldn't find her. In a panic, her boyfriend jumped in to help, but she'd already been swept downstream by the bubbles and debris. The search for Madison was difficult. They brought in a helicopter, the Swiftwater Rescue Team, and local rescue volunteers. But the conditions made it dangerous for anyone to enter Devil's Pool. The rescue teams had to be secured with safety lines and specialist equipment. As one of the rescuers later said in a report about the site, "We don't get to do rescues here. When we get the call, it's already a retrieval." It took 2 days to recover Madison's body. Madison's death, like many before it, sparked renewed calls for better safety measures at the site. But even with added fencing, warning signs, and public education campaigns, the pull of those crystal clear waters still draws people into danger. Part of the issue is social media. Gorgeous pictures of Devil's Pool and other restricted areas are shared online, with no mention of the risks. These posts create a false sense of safety and encourage others to seek out these off-limit spots. To understand why Babinda Boulders is so deadly, we need to look at the specific hazards lurking beneath its surface. A safety review identified 5 major water flow hazards. The first is the aerated water. They found that these bubbles strip away 30% of the water's density. It's almost like trying to swim through air, making it impossible to float. even with a life jacket. The second hazard is the sieves or siphons. The water flowing in these spaces can pin someone underwater with enough force to make escape impossible. The third element is what are called strainers. These are similar to sieves, but they're formed by logs, branches, and other debris that can create underwater barriers. Fourth are the undercuts. These are areas where the water flows beneath rock ledges. Once pulled under an undercut, there's no way to reach the surface. Lastly, there are deep holes that create swirling currents and spinning water that can trap swimmers underwater, like being stuck in a washing machine. The chute, responsible for the first recorded tragedy, is the most dangerous section. It alone accounts for over half of all deaths at Babinda Boulders. The danger is made worse by the fact that these hazards aren't immediately obvious to visitors. The water is often crystal clear, giving a false impression of safety. The smooth, polished granite surfaces look inviting rather than perilous. Ironically, when it rains heavily and the creek looks visibly dangerous and powerful, people tend to stay away. It's during moderate flow conditions, where the water seems calm and inviting, that many tragedies happen. But sometimes, even people who know how dangerous it is can fall victim. On December 20th, 2021, in the middle of the Australian summer, 19-year-old Chloe Narelle Bailey from Edmonton was hanging out with friends at Babinda Boulders. Unlike many victims who purposely go into the water in restricted areas, Chloe didn't mean to enter the pool. Chloe and her friends were out hiking, carefully making their way over the boulders and around the pools. They had no plans to swim. They were aware of the dangers and had heard about the deaths. But what they didn't know was that the rocks at Babinda Boulders are covered in a thin layer of algae that gets extremely slippery when wet. As Chloe walked over the steep rocks by the chute, her foot slipped on the algae, and she fell in and was dragged under immediately. Her friend screamed and started yelling for help. Emergency services were called, but just like with Madison the year before, it was already too late. Chloe's body was found the next day. She became another victim of Babinda Boulders. For one witness, the horror of that day never faded. I found that I was having flashbacks and couldn't sleep for years afterward, just knowing that someone died right in front of us and there was absolutely nothing we could do to help her. Chloe's death hit the local community hard because she was one of their own. Unlike many victims who were tourists and didn't know about the dangers, Chloe had grown up hearing about the risks. She was trying to be careful, but still ended up falling victim to this treacherous spot. Since 2010, Cairns Regional Council has implemented many safety measures at Babinda Boulders. No-go zones, signs, closing off the area, more signs, new fences, more fences, closed trails, locked gates for emergency access, and a 2022 safety review after 3 people drowned in just 2 years. But sadly, people were ignoring the warnings. Well, there's danger signs everywhere. We see them. That's just part and parcel of being in North Queensland near waterholes. You don't particularly take any notice. The safety review found that 95% felt safe visiting the high-risk areas. Even more concerning was that more than half weren't worried about heading into the no-go zones, despite knowing the site's tragic history. The review also found that social media played a big role in encouraging risky behavior. Photos of people swimming in restricted areas without mentioning the dangers gave a misleading sense of safety. So the local government put up new, more graphic warning signs that explain the dangers and list the names of those who have died. And even as recently as 2024, the boulders were still claiming lives. On December 15, 2024, a group of hikers was making their way through the area. These hikers had a bit of a different reason for being there compared to some others. While they definitely enjoyed the stunning views, their main goal was to find a peaceful spot to swim, away from crocodiles. Crocodile numbers have been on the rise in coastal waterways, which means more visitors are headed inland to scout for freshwater swimming spots. When the safe areas get too packed, some people decide to venture into the waters beyond the fences. Like many visitors, they strayed off the official trails through the rainforest looking for a more private place to take a dip. One of the hikers was familiar with the area and its dangers, so he led them upstream, past Devil's Pool and the chute, to a spot called Babinda Falls. What he didn't realize was that the falls are just as treacherous. That's when one of their group, a 29-year-old tourist, decided to take a dip in the calm-looking waters. He was instantly caught in a washing machine-like swirl that dragged him under. All his friends could do was watch him disappear. A search was quickly launched, involving police, state emergency service, swift water rescue crews, and a police helicopter, but it had to be called off overnight due to dangerous conditions. The tourist's body was found at 11 a.m. the next day. He became yet another victim of the dangerous waters around the Babinda Boulders. In their latest bid to improve safety, the regional council reached out to tourism bodies to spread warnings and started working on developing other safe and crocodile-free wild swimming spots in nearby national parks. The police have also increased patrols around the boulders, aiming to educate rather than punish anyone found in the no-go areas. But maybe the tourists should just listen to those who have known the waters the longest, the area's native Manindangi people, and what may be the first recorded death at the boulders. They tell a story of a young woman named Ulana, who was promised to an elder, but she fell in love with Daiga, a young man from a visiting tribe. They ran away together and were found at the boulders. After she and her lover were torn apart, Ulana broke free and jumped into the waters, causing the boulders to rise and the water to foam. The Manindangi believe her spirit is still there, trying to find her love by pulling men in with her. The chilling part is that 84% of all deaths at Babinda have been male, and over half are young men between 18 and 24 years old. It's as if Ulana's spirit really does lure young men to their deaths as she searches endlessly for her lost lover. Or it's probably that young men are more prone to taking deadly risks. To date, the 21 people who have lost their lives there, from the earliest recorded victim in 1916 to Madison Tam, Chloe Bailey, and the unnamed tourist in 2024, serve as sobering reminders of nature's power. Watch this episode next if you found this video interesting. Please add a like and leave a comment if you want to support the channel.